You don't need to change the world. You don't have to chase external achievements, nor control the events that cross your path. True change happens where almost no one looks, in the silent lens through which you observe life. Few realize that the reality they experience doesn't arise from facts, but from the quality of the gaze they cast upon them. What you see out there is merely the vibrational echo of the internal state of the observer. Your mind, your emotions, and your vibration are not passive responses to reality. They are the instruments that shape it moment by moment. What you will see, feel, and create will never be the same once you understand the hidden power of your observation. Every perception you nurture turns into living matter along your path. Every emotion that colors your gaze either opens or closes invisible portals, determining the experiences you attract. Today you stand before a portal where your gaze stops repeating old patterns and begins to birth new realities. Let's cross it together. Not to forcibly change the outer world, but to reconnect you with the true point of creation, your state of consciousness. Get ready. When you change the way you observe, life itself will respond differently. It's not magic. It's a universal law, and it has always been waiting for you to awaken. The old way of observing creates the loop of life. For a long time, we were taught to believe that life is something that happens in front of us, beyond our control, as an inevitable sequence of events. Without realizing it, we became passive observers, automatically reacting to whatever happens. We repeat old patterns of perception without even noticing. We look at the world not with fresh eyes, but through the clouded lenses of fear, frustration, judgment, and wounded expectations. The problem is that this automatic way of observing is exactly what creates the endless loop of life. The conditioned mind, based on memories and past traumas, observes reality expecting to find what it already knows, and inevitably, it does. Not because life is limited, but because the observer has unconsciously predetermined what will be possible to perceive. When you observe through fear, your choices narrow. Your reactions become defensive. Your vibration aligns with experiences that validate that perception. When you observe with distrust, the energetic field around you responds, reflecting even more reasons to distrust. When you expect to be disappointed, you unconsciously create the environment for that disappointment to unfold. And so, without realizing it, we repeat the same days, the same conflicts, the same frustrations, believing that others, circumstances, or fate are imprisoning us. But in truth, we are simply projecting the same old image onto the internal screen of reality, like a projector running the same worn-out film over and over. This repetition is not a punishment. It's an unrecognized opportunity. Reality, like an infinite mirror, only reflects back the vibrational quality of your observation. It's not the world that refuses to change. It's the sleeping gaze that insists on seeing things the same old way. The external repetition mirrors the internal repetition of the observer. Imagine someone walking through a vast field of infinite possibilities, yet always sticking to the same small beaten path, too afraid to venture beyond it. With each step, they reinforce the same track. Deepen the ruts, narrow the way. This is the cycle of unconscious observation, an unlimited field lived in a limited way because the observer cannot see beyond their internal patterns. All real change begins with awareness of this cycle. As long as the observer remains on autopilot, life will simply mirror their unconscious expectations. But the moment you begin to question the way you observe, not what you observe, but how you observe, a crack opens. That crack is the beginning of awakening, the start of breaking free from the loop. Understand this: the loop is not sustained by reality itself, but by your insistence on observing through what you already know, through emotions that have become familiar, even if painful. It's the familiarity with suffering, the intimacy with doubt, the attachment to fear. And while your gaze continues to be shaped by those emotions, life will keep responding at the same frequency. But there's good news: the observer can change. And when that happens, no matter how deeply ingrained the old pattern may be, reality begins to respond in a new way. The transformation of the observer breaks the cycle, And that is exactly what we are going to explore next. How to awaken a new way of seeing that has the power to redesign your life. What changes when the observer awakens? Awakening as the observer is one of the subtlest and at the same time most revolutionary movements a human being can make. When the gaze shifts from unconscious to conscious, a new dynamic begins to operate silently within reality. What was once lived as automatic repetition becomes deliberate creation. The first sign that the observer has awakened is presence, a kind of presence that is not concerned with judging, labeling, or protecting itself. It is a silent, attentive, expansive presence, a gaze that does not rush to interpret, but allows reality to reveal itself in its purest form. In this new state, something extraordinary begins to happen. The field around you, which has always responded to internal vibrations, now responds from a higher frequency. It's not magic nor illusion, it's vibrational physics. Everything that exists is energy, and energy organizes itself around specific frequencies. When your state of consciousness rises, your frequencies shift, and the field reorganizes its possibilities to mirror this new pattern. Where once there were only unsolvable problems, unexpected solutions begin to emerge. Where once there was only resistance, flows of ease open up. People, circumstances, and opportunities vibrating at this new frequency start crossing your path naturally, like puzzle pieces that can only now fit together. The awakened observer is no longer a prisoner of past memories or future anxieties. They exist, live, and create from the only true point of power, the now. Their observation becomes an act of conscious creation, not a conditioned reaction. They understand that their task is not to control reality, but to tune their consciousness so precisely that reality, through natural resonance, harmonizes around their new state of being. This transformation, though silent to the outer world, is immense within the inner universe. When you awaken as an observer, you realize that external circumstances are merely momentary reflections. They are not sentences. They are not limitations. They are fleeting mirrors, responding to your internal state like the surface of a lake responding to the light touch of a stone. You come to recognize that every elevated emotion, gratitude, trust, love, peace, is not just a beautiful feeling, but a real force capable of altering the vibrational structure of your field and therefore your life. Emotion ceases to be a reaction and becomes a conscious choice, a tool of creation. The awakening of the observer also brings an expansion of perception. You begin to see beyond appearances, beyond what the physical senses capture. Intuitions become clearer. Synchronicities multiply. Life, once perceived as a random sequence of events, reveals itself as a living tapestry of intelligence and purpose, responding precisely to your inner alignment. And in this new state, effort loses its former meaning. It's no longer about struggling against the current, but about flowing with life, consciously choosing what to observe, what to nourish, what to strengthen with your focus. The awakened observer understands that true power lies not in trying to change what is already manifested, but in shifting the frequency of consciousness so that new manifestations naturally occur. To awaken as an observer is to become a conscious co-creator of your reality. It is to stop being a victim of reflections and step into your rightful place as one who, by observing with presence, intention, and love, redraws existence in harmony with the vastness of the universe. How focus shapes invisible paths. Focus is the invisible thread that weaves possibilities together and gives shape to what we call reality. In a universe where everything is energy, where fields of information coexist as multiple potentials, what you choose to observe intensely becomes what you experience. Focus is not just looking, it is investing conscious energy. Every time you direct your attention, you activate a line of reality and silently begin to strengthen it till it becomes tangible before your eyes. Most people focus in a scattered, automatic way, driven by unrecognized emotional impulses. They observe their problems with fear, their doubts with anxiety, and their desires with distrust. And without realizing it, they feed exactly what they wish to change. Unconscious focus then becomes the mortar that perpetuates old structures. But when focus is guided by presence and elevated emotion, it ceases to be a conditioned reflex and becomes an instrument of conscious creation. To focus is much more than thinking about something. It is investing your vibrational essence into it. And through this investment, reality silently bends to match the energy you have emanated. It is not mental effort that creates. It is the quality of your attention. Attention immersed in elevated emotion is like a seed planted in fertile soil, watered with pure intention and illuminated by the light of awakened consciousness. Imagine that around you there are millions of invisible paths, like trails in a dense forest that you cannot see with the naked eye. Each thought you sustain, each emotion you reinforce is like a beam of light that clears one of these trails, making it more solid, more accessible, more real. With every moment of conscious focus, you step toward a direction that was once just a vague possibility. You are crystallizing paths in the fabric of existence. When focus is scattered, the paths become entangled. Energy spreads without direction, creating chaotic movements that reinforce the feeling of being lost, without purpose. But when focus is aligned with elevated emotions, such as gratitude, joy, and trust, the paths open clearly, like rivers unfolding gently across the landscape, guiding you toward higher versions of your own story. Focus shapes invisible paths not through the force of will, but through the purity of presence. It is not about forcing reality to obey your immediate desires, but about sustaining the vibration aligned with what you wish to experience, even when the outer world has yet to reflect that change. True focus is vibrational commitment, not mental insistence. When you focus with elevated emotion, you tune into the vibrational essence of what you wish to create. And in that state, what once seemed distant begins to move toward you through ways the rational mind could never have planned. Synchronicities arise, coincidences multiply, unexpected doors open. Reality, which once seemed solid and rigid, reveals its malleability before awakened consciousness. The secret is not to struggle to create new paths, but to allow them to reveal themselves through your constant and aligned focus. Just as light reveals hidden shapes in a dark room, your conscious focus unveils realities that were invisible, waiting only to be illuminated by your awakened intention. The more you master your focus, the more you understand that life does not happen to you, it responds to you. The entire universe, in its infinite intelligence, does not ignore a focus sustained by love, clarity, and presence. On the contrary, it silently conspires so that what you honor with your attention flourishes before your eyes. Thus, shaping invisible paths becomes a sacred art of observing with intention and vibrating with purpose. Each moment of conscious focus is a seed of the future planted in the now. And the more you practice, the more natural it becomes to consciously choose which trails you wish to illuminate, and inevitably to live. The portal between who you are and what you experience is observation. There is a silent space between who you are and the reality you experience. This space is invisible to the common senses, but absolutely real. It is the portal where life transforms from potential into experience, where the field of infinite possibilities condenses into facts, encounters, and situations. And this portal is not a distant or inaccessible place. It is present in every instant, vibrating in the simplest and most powerful act you continuously perform: your observation. Most people live as if reality were a fixed, immutable stage that must be faced or conquered. But few realize that what defines what you experience is not the stage itself, but the way you observe it. The gaze is not a passive act. It is the brush that paints the canvas of existence. It is through the quality of your observation that you connect your essence to the flow of life, and without realizing it, choose which versions of reality will manifest. To observe is not simply to see. To observe is to recognize, to vibrate, to assign meaning. When you observe something as an obstacle, that perception solidifies and becomes resistant. When you observe with eyes of possibility, the same situation opens up as a disguised opportunity. The difference is not in what happens, but in how your gaze interacts with the invisible field that sustains events. The portal of change has never been hurried action or resistance against what is. The true portal is silent, internal, and begins the moment you alter the way you choose to observe. Reality is a mirror that reflects not what you desire, but what you vibrate while observing. The future is not a place to be reached. The future is a focus. It is the quality of your gaze now that determines the paths that will open ahead. When you change the internal state from which you observe, even if nothing external seems to have changed, you have already crossed the portal. The new frequency you sustain begins to attract compatible experiences, silently rearranging the scenery around you. It is like changing the station of a radio. The songs you once heard disappear, and new ones, more aligned with the new frequency, begin to fill the air. Thus, true transformation does not begin in matter. It begins in the observer, in the being who, aware of their vibrational responsibility, chooses to observe the world not from lack, doubt, or fear, but from abundance, trust, and love. This is the moment when the portal opens. Not before the physical eyes, but within the silent frequency you sustain at the core of your being. Many times we seek external changes in hopes of altering what we feel inside. But the order is reversed. First, the gaze must change. First, the vibration must shift. And then, as in a precise dance, life responds. Experiences reconfigure, relationships align, opportunities once invisible are revealed. The practice is continuous. At every moment, life offers the chance to cross the portal again. Every situation, every challenge, every encounter brings the same silent question. From where are you observing now? If the answer is fear, insecurity, or judgment, reality will tend to reflect those vibrations. But if the answer is presence, gratitude, and trust, the same reality will open up as fertile ground for new creations. Understanding that observation is the portal is realizing that you are never trapped by events, only by the way you interpret and vibrate them. And that realization is the key to freedom. When the observer changes, the world changes. When consciousness crosses the portal, life becomes a clear mirror of your highest state of being. Thus, each moment becomes a silent choice. To repeat the old gaze or to cross, with courage and presence, the portal that transforms who you are and everything you experience. Practical technique to change the way you observe. Changing the way you observe is not an intellectual act. It's not about gathering more information or understanding complex theories. It is a direct, living, silent experience. A shift that happens within, in the intimate space between the world's stimulus and your internal response. And the first step in this transformation is the pause. Amid the rush of daily life, few realize they live in constant reaction. Someone says something, and a response arises automatically. A problem appears, and immediately anxiety, judgment, and fear take over. Without the pause, observation is hijacked by the past, and the observer repeats old patterns before even noticing. The pause is the sacred space where the new can be born. When you pause, even for just a brief moment, you create a crack in the automatism. In that space, consciousness breathes, and in that breath, reality ceases to be unconscious repetition and becomes a living opportunity for creation. The pause is not an escape from what is happening. It is an act of presence, an acknowledgement that you are greater than the circumstances that arise. After the pause, the invitation is to observe without labeling, without immediately calling something good or bad, right or wrong, fair or unfair. Observing with neutrality is like clearing the lens of perception. It is allowing reality to reveal itself fully, not merely through the limitations of old emotional filters. When you observe without rushing to judge, your frequency shifts. The field around you feels this shift. Life feels it. In this state of presence, a simple but powerful question becomes the portal to new creation. What reality do I want to strengthen now? Not what do I want to avoid, nor what do I fear might happen, but rather what I choose to strengthen, to nurture, to grow. This question realigns your observation with your highest intention. It moves you from fear into creation, from automatism into conscious mastery. And then comes the final act of this silent technique, choosing the emotion with which you wish to observe. It's not about pretending to feel something, nor denying the emotions that arise spontaneously. It is about making a conscious choice, observing with gratitude, even in the face of a challenge, observing with peace, even amid uncertainty, observing with trust, even when the outcome has yet to appear. When you choose the emotion that sustains your gaze, you are not just changing your mood, you are altering the frequency with which you interact with the quantum field. You are aligning your being with realities that resonate with that higher vibration. In that instant, you become the alchemist of your own experience. This simple yet profound practice can be applied at any time. In a conflict, upon hearing unexpected news, during a difficult conversation, or even in everyday moments. Every instant becomes an opportunity to rewrite your reality through the way you choose to observe. Over time, this conscious choice becomes natural. The pause becomes a reflex. Neutrality becomes your new default state. The question becomes a silent compass guiding your focus. And elevated emotion becomes the vibrational signature of your presence. Changing the way you observe is changing your point of creation. It is stepping out of automatic repetition and into the space where the new becomes possible. It is honoring the power that has always been within you, but which can only be activated through awakened consciousness. And above all, it is recognizing that in each moment, you are the silent artist painting the canvas of your own existence. Reality changes when the observer changes frequency, not force. For a long time, we were conditioned to believe that transformation depends on force, that changing life demands immense effort, constant struggle, and overcoming obstacles through willpower. But there is a subtler and far more powerful law operating behind every manifestation. Reality does not change through the force with which you face it, but through the frequency with which you observe it. The universe does not respond to your haste, your anxiety, or your attempt to control every detail. It responds to your state of being, to the silent vibration you carry as you observe, to the energy you emanate even before a word is spoken, even before an action is taken. When the observer insists on changing reality through force, they act within the same frequency that created the scenario they wish to change. They fight against circumstances as if they were separate from themselves, ignoring that they are mere reflections. And in that battle, more of the same is created. The more resistance, the more persistence of what they wanted to remove. The more desperate effort, the greater the feeling of separation and powerlessness. But when the observer understands that the key lies in frequency, everything changes. Changing frequency is changing reality at its root, not just on the surface. Frequency is determined by dominant emotion, by the quality of focus, by the silent intention that permeates every gaze. Frequency is not an isolated thought. It is the state of consciousness you inhabit, the vibrational field you sustain even when no one is watching. You have likely felt it in moments of pure gratitude, in instants of full trust, in seconds of such deep peace that it seemed the entire world was reorganizing around you. And that is exactly what happens. The field around you senses your vibration, life senses it, and in response, the universe bends to reflect what you are now emitting. Trying to change reality by force is like trying to change a mirror's reflection by breaking the glass. You may act with intensity, but if your internal state remains the same, the reflection will not change. When you change the frequency, it is as if you change the light illuminating the scene. What once seemed dark becomes clear. What once seemed impossible becomes natural. And changing frequency does not require struggle. It requires awareness. It requires presence. It requires the deliberate choice to vibrate differently, even if old patterns still try to pull you back. It is in that space of choice that the miracle happens. When you decide to observe with a new state of being, even before the external reality shows signs of change, it is essential to trust the invisible process, to trust that the vibration you emit now is already planting seeds in fields not yet visible to the naked eye, to trust that reality is always responding, even if the response first arrives in subtle levels before crystallizing into concrete events. This is the true mastery of the conscious observer. It is not force that moves mountains. It is frequency. It is the aligned, coherent, vibrant internal state that dissolves obstacles, attracts solutions, and opens pathways where once there were walls. The universe, in its infinite wisdom, does not bow to the pressure of the ego. It responds to the purity of vibration. When the observer changes frequency, everything around them inevitably begins to reorganize. People, opportunities, synchronicities, all dance to the rhythm of the new music you have begun to play. Life does not need to be forced, it needs to be tuned. And when you tune your consciousness to higher states, transformation ceases to be a battle and becomes a flow. A natural, light, harmonious flow that carries you exactly where your soul already knew you could go. Changing frequency is changing worlds without changing places. It is stepping into a new vibrational reality where what once seemed distant now becomes part of your path. Because the universe has always been, and will always be, a mirror of the silent vibration with which you choose to observe. We have reached the end of our journey, but in truth, this is where a new path begins. Now you know the world you see is not fixed and immutable. It is the living reflection of the consciousness with which you observe. Everything you seek already exists, simply waiting for your eyes to open to new possibilities. Today we cross the silent portal where the gaze stops repeating old patterns and becomes the creative source of new realities. Your presence, your vibrational choice, your conscious focus, they are what sculpt the life you are about to experience. My invitation is simple yet profound. For the next 24 hours, practice observing your world without judgment, with full presence. Witness how small miracles begin to appear when your gaze becomes a fertile field of conscious creation. Remember, the world changes when the observer awakens, and that awakening begins now, within you.